Peter, is the EU going to meet the 2035 commitments?
Well, I'm not a gambling man, but if I was, I certainly wouldn't be betting against them. And that's just based off the progress that we've seen in the EU over the last 5 to 10 years. So we are already seeing a significant shift in the EU away from petrol and diesel engines. There's been significant investment in infrastructure. New car sales, we've seen significant growth in the EV market, you know, in some countries as high as 40%. So if you look at, say, for example, Norway, their new car sales are as high as 40%. The UK is certainly doing a lot better than we are. And a lot of those countries have already seen significant uptake. There are benefits to buying them. There's a raft of different incentives and subsidies.
So why are we laggards?
Look, there's a number of factors here that have played a role here in Australia. And, you know, I think it's easy to look to excuses and point the finger. It's not that simplistic. I mean, we are a very different market. We're a very unique market. Our driving history is quite unique. It's more like what you see in the United States compared to other parts of the world. Part of it has been a lack of, you know, initiative, but not exclusively. We haven't built the charging infrastructure in Australia that other parts of the world have done. We don't have the makes and models that are readily available to our market that you see in other parts of the world. And our driving is different. We drive further distances. We do need to catch up, if for no other reason than the fact that the places we buy our cars from are changing and we need to change with it.
If Europe and Japan, I think, is very much in the same place, if they're going to be essentially not making diesel or fuel cars for their own markets, are they going to be making a special batch of petrol and diesel cars for us?
No, well, that's not going to, it's unlikely. Our market's not big enough, but also, you know, Toyota is the #1 selling, you know, make model here in Australia. And, you know, Toyota have made its commitments. And so we need to be prepared for the fact that the companies that do make these cars want to sell certain types of cars to their own populations. They are inevitably going to sell them for the export market. We are part of that export market. We don't want to be a dumping ground for what the rest of the world doesn't want to drive or isn't interested in driving anymore. Again, we're talking, you know, it's the deadlines that some of these countries are talking about are 15 years away. So, you know, we don't want to panic here in Australia. We don't want Australians to panic. This is not about taking away your favorite car. It's about making sure Australia is well placed to have access to the choice and the choices that will come online.
Well, let's talk about what the federal government is saying for a minute. So two facts that seem really important is that current EVs, electric vehicles, can travel about 500 k's between a charge, and people can charge at home overnight. And the second figure is that 20% of our carbon emissions are automotive. The coal lobby can't object to it because it's going to involve the consumption of more electricity. So I can't see where the roadblock is to the feds not encouraging EVs to be in sync with what's happening with the car manufacturers overseas.
In my view, the partisan kind of political focus has shifted somewhat in this area. Certainly since the 2019 election, the federal government have already announced a range of initiatives and incentives to encourage the uptake of EVs, to encourage infrastructure of charging. You know, we have a lot of lithium in this country, so there are genuine opportunities, commercial opportunities with the uptake of electric vehicles for batteries.
So then, just in practical terms now, I'm in Sydney, can I drive to Canberra and get a charge and come home again in an EV? And the same with Melbourne? Just
off the network that the NRMA has built alone, you can get to Canberra, you can get to the Hunter Valley and come back. We've got charging stations along the journey to the Hunter and beyond, all the way up to Tamworth. So, and that's just the NRMA, and we know that there are other players out there as well. So you can get to Canberra. You know, there is a charging network that we've begun to construct off the Hume Highway, off the main highways that head in, so you can pull into regional towns and tourism locations and charge there. Same heading towards South Australia. So just within the New South Wales boundaries alone, the work that the NRMA has been doing, building its fast charging network since 2000, and well, we've been doing it for about 4 years now, that has opened up those journeys.
So let's talk about prices at the moment. So electric cars are cheaper to run because there are less complicated parts. And I understand that charging an electric car is cheaper than the equivalent kilometres per tank, if you like. But what about the price point of the cost of purchase?
Yeah, well, there's the sticking point, and this is the reality that we face. Until you get price parity between electric vehicles and petrol and diesel cars for like type models, until you start to see those prices, those ticket prices come down, and the number of the choices available to Australia increase in terms of the types of cars they can drive, we will continue to struggle. They are cheaper to drive. If you're driving your typical family mid-range SUV, you're probably paying upwards of $100 to fill up. You're not going to pay anything like that when you're charging an electric vehicle. At most, you're probably talking about $20. And so the savings are significant. But until we get those ticket prices come down in this country, and until we see the choice, the range of vehicles available to Australians increase, we will continue to have these difficulties. To give you an example, a Tesla 3 in Australia is about $20,000 more expensive than the exact same car in the United States, taking into consideration the exchange rate.
We're being ripped off, are we, by the car manufacturers who are able to charge more here?
They're able to charge more here because of the market. There aren't the incentives that some of those countries offer. You know, if these guys, if they sell their cars in some countries, EU, and you get carbon credits, those carbon credits help go towards building other vehicles. We don't have the emissions standards that those countries have, so that there isn't that the need to kind of bring down their tailpipe emissions. So we need to catch up in some of those critical areas.
Well, certainly we don't have the carbon credit market. And as you know, that's been furiously debated in Canberra. But also the emission standards in Australia are so much different. So it's quite a complex model you're looking at. It's not just a matter of simply, let's go out and buy the government simply changing one policy. They've got to juggle a number of policies for this to work.
Yeah, and look, again, to be fair to the federal government, we've since seen progress in this area made this year, some progress. We'd like to see more. So, one positive is that government is now ensuring that, if you are going to build new apartment blocks, that they have to be compatible to this new technology. That will go a long way to helping. And then looking at what you can do to retrospectively put in charging hubs in those local communities so that people can charge if they don't have access to available on-street parking, or you don't have your own standalone garage, which, outside of those inner city areas, more and more families do.
Peter Khoury, great information, nicely told. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.